Greetings from the Long Island Sound podcast. Welcome to the show. Please rate, review, and comment on the show, and call our listener line and leave a message for our guest. Dial 631-800-3579. All right, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Long Island Sound podcast, where we explore the muse and the music, from the North Shore to the South Shore, from New York City to the Hamptons, navigating the wellspring of original music from singer-songwriters and musicians from Long Island, New York. Hi, I'm Steve Yusko from gigdestiny.com. Stay tuned as we explore the Long Island Sound. We have quite the accomplished guest for you today. Not only is he an author of mystery novels, he's an accomplished songwriter, band leader, drummer, multi-instrumentalist. And he was also a detective for 20 years in the New York City Police Department. And I'm really excited about our guest today, Marco Conelli. I came across my next guest through an acquaintance, and we soon discovered that we had a mutual friend. I believe Kevin MacLeod describes him well. He's a good friend, a talented guy, great songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and band leader. That's not all. After serving for 20 years as a New York City police detective, he's also an accomplished author and mystery writer who debuted the character Matthew Livingston in a series of novels. His band, The Complex, infiltrated the radio scene in the late 1990s, and their song, Here Comes Janine Again, on Long Island's WLIR FM radio. As Matthew Livingston might say, there's more to uncover about Marco Conelli. Welcome to the Long Island Sound, Marco.
Thank you, Steve. Good to see you. I mean, I see you, could not just hear you, you know.
Yeah, it's as we were mentioning off air, it's actually good to see people, and things are starting to loosen up. And I have a lot of empathy for musicians who can't practice their art. And I've met some interesting people who've gone to different platforms and still continue, even though they can play live. So what I'm always interested in, maybe my audience isn't, but I am, where did you start? When did you pick up an instrument and say, hey, I think I can do this? What point in your life?
I'd say late elementary school. I was a drummer first, you know, mm-hmm. And I'm glad I was, because it kind of gave me something like the spine of eventually songwriting. You know, anything I do, whatever instrument I write on now, I'm cognizant of, you know, if there's a beat to it or things like that. So I had played with a number of people, but then I really quickly found that the people I admired most were writing the songs. So that, you know, kind of switched gears and, you know, became more of guitar as an instrument.
Yeah, it's like the old joke, you know, what did the drummer say before he was kicked out of the band? Hey, I got a song I want you guys to play. So.
Okay, we're gonna just, you know, the great, one of my favorites, Andy Partridge of XTC, songwriter, and I had the pleasure of meeting him a few times. And one time he was just on a tear with these drummer jokes, and he'd say, "How do you know when a drummer is knocking at your door? Is that the knock gets quicker or faster? It speeds up, you know?
It drags or it speeds up, right?"
Exactly.
So did you come now? Where'd you grow up, in Queens or?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. That's technically geographically part of Long Island, so we can
Absolutely.
can continue with the episode, even though it's Queens.
You're the one that says it goes all the way to Manhattan.
Yeah, I know. That's okay. You did your homework. That's because you are a detective, so I get it.
It's very wise. It is Long Island. It is.
Now, did you come from a musical family? Mom and dad play instruments? Any of your siblings?
No. Just,
really?
I heard the Beatles, you know, like a million other people.
Right. It's amazing their influence on
Sure.
getting kids out there, which I think is really great. So you started in drums in like high school, sure. Right? Middle school, high school,
elementary school.
Elementary school.
Yeah.
Did you do the band thing in high school, or where did you progress?
I liked it. You know, they had jazz. It was called Jazz Workshop. and I couldn't read or anything, but I got the experience of playing with horn sections and things like that, and really like I think it's odd today what people when they tell you they're into jazz, what they describe it as.
Hmm.
I had the Benny Goodmans and the Duke Ellington. It was great. It was great stuff to play, and then to hear. I want to actually get a couple of those recordings now. Hopefully they've remastered or mastered them at least a little bit. But that was good. And then I heard drummers like Gene Krupa,
Mm.
and it was interesting. So that's what they had in high school, and it was good.
Yeah, great stuff. Great stuff to dance to,
Yeah,
yeah, I remember I went did square dancing in high school, and then
there you
we
go.
were fortunate that we had a big band segment in our school,
Mhm.
which was really phenomenal. It was it's kind of like the music mom and dad listened to, but
Sure.
you when you see your friends playing it, you get a new appreciation
Yeah,
for it.
yeah.
You know.
I honestly, I said when you said square dancing, you said you were fortunate. I thought you would say that you were in a round room.
No, see, I grew up in a Polish family, so
That's it.
your big fat aunt at 5 years old will get you out on the dance floor, kicking and screaming, and I thought I was such a nerd. And then
No,
in high school, like the jocks wouldn't dance, I
yeah.
would, and like the pretty girls would dance with me. I'm like, oh my god, this is I should have been a dancer. Well,
S- s-
hindsight's 2020.
There you go.
So did you ever have a break from music? Did you like where did it progress from there for you?
Uh, Not necessarily a break. I remember years back trying to figure out once you started writing and then eventually recording your own music, what to do with it. Now we're segueing into the age of compact discs and things like
Hmm.
that, which I always loved. It was like the perfect packaging for me. Not taking anything away from vinyl, but I just loved the compactness of it. I liked all the aspects of it, the digital aspects of it, but uh, putting a CD out and now, because you didn't really come across an agent anywhere to guide you, so you had to really. We actually backdoored with the Complex the song Janine.
Hmm.
College of Staten Island played it first,
Wow. Okay.
and then we were doing it and just quickly learn. You know what? You learn this. You learn what your hit is because we did it early in a set once and everyone left.
They're spent, and
At
that's all they
last,
got.
last song before the encore.
So you were out
So
in the clubs with the Complex, right?
sadly, a lot of those places are gone. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm 60, so I was in high school. It was a lot of great music, and it was almost like the death of live music when
yeah.
disco came.
Okay,
All these places were like gone. It just kind of switched, and now it's. I was talking to Mike Nugent, my good friend, who
sure.
said this is the age of the cover band. The
Yeah,
tribute, the
yeah.
tribute,
The
the
tribute
tribute
band.
band,
Yeah.
and I'm not. I mean, there's really some fantastic aspects to it, and that's almost seems to be a vehicle to get your original music out.
I think that is coming as a byproduct, sad to say, is that a lot of the groups we like are much older now. And, maybe you'll go see that Pink Floyd tribute band or, that they garner a lot of interest.
Yeah, yeah.
And we probably outside of like Beatlemania never saw that when we
Oh,
were
true.
younger.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah,
Now, when so you were a police officer.
sure.
So
Yeah.
so were you in the band? You decided to become a
Sure, I
police.
did both. I
You
had
did. Okay.
the two passions rivaling each other, and later, probably about 16 years in, really realized the other thing was to write something. I call that music's longhand. And it just came from. I guess I gravitated to a lot of things that I was a fan of. I heard music. I was a fan of music. I wanted to play it. I read. And I was someone. I was a big fan of several different authors.
Hmm.
Most of them deceased, but classics like Conan Doyle or Rex Stout, Agatha Christie, and it was the next thing. So it was a natural progression and an equally um, fun thing writing just like playing music, equally fun in a different way.
What's interesting is what I in looking at your bio and your career is that thread of creativity. Hey, all singer songwriters are writers per se, but you have these two passions in writing novels, which are phenomenal. I think it's great, and then songwriting as well. Two different
Yeah.
practices. But kind of tied together, just like those songwriters who I think of Springsteen. He writes songs as a screenplay almost.
Yeah.
And
He scratches a lot of different itches.
oh,
And,
now, yeah,
yeah.
yeah, it's
I listened to that, with him, that the recording in Dublin, the one in Dublin with the. So I guess he was doing like the Seeger sessions or
right,
something like that.
right,
Yeah.
correct, yeah. He's,
And pay me my money down, and a lot of good stuff
this
there.
land is your land,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and
yeah,
and
yeah,
and and really kind of brought that back to
yeah,
the forefront with his celebrity, which is
yeah.
great because it can kind of get lost in the dust, so to speak. So
Seeger was a Hampton, East Hampton, Southampton.
he could have been. I know he
Yeah.
did a lot of work in his later life on the Hudson River with
Okay.
ecology and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and he can be a whole episode or three on his career and how he got shunned and blacklisted
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
everything else. And I heard, I just since you mentioned it, I was interesting. I heard this. I think it was on the radio. About all the different musicians that are selling their catalogs.
I just heard it today too. Yeah.
Yeah, and what Seeger, when Seeger left his group, and I'm trying to remember his group that he was in, they were going to sell their songs to a cigarette ad,
Okay.
and he just said,
Yeah.
No, I won't do that to my art. I won't do that. So I found that pretty interesting.
I know I just mentioned the name, but I remember, because you jogged my memory. Speaking of Andy Partridge of XTC, I remember, and it was at a time, I think, when they could have used a financiality. He was asked to write a couple songs for a Disney film. It was James and the Giant Peach,
Mm-hmm.
and then he wrote these songs, and they're great, and they'd be perfect for the film. And I think Disney said, "That's great. Okay, we own them now. Once you sign this." And he said, "Oh, And then he said to me, "Now I got 8 songs about a damn peach." So,
Yeah, what do I do with that? Sell it to the Allman Brothers, right? Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah, what you can do with that? Yeah, it's interesting, and it almost rolls into. I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Robert Miller, who's from New York City, and he was bemoaning Spotify, which pays
Okay.
fractions of pennies to people for their music. It definitely gives you a venue to throw stuff up, but you're unless you get a hit, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to get it, and people can listen for free. So, man, things are kind of changing for the good and
Yeah.
bad, I guess. It's interesting.
I respect the people that research this and know what the angle is, or what's in it for them. It's a good platform, because there are a lot of platforms out there now, and YouTube is crazy with things, but this is fine.
Oh, hey, this podcast wouldn't, without Spotify and Google and everything else, it wouldn't be out there, for people to access.
Sure.
It's kind of interesting how you can just do it from my office and get it out to
Yeah.
the world. It's kind of fun.
I think that, speaking of selling catalogs, Mick Jagger and Keith Richards were talking about it, and and Keith said, "Well, why are we talking about this now? We got 50 years to talk about this."
Right, and he'll probably live the 50 years knowing Keith Richards.
Yeah.
So tell me something. How did you go from, okay, I've written some songs and now I'm going to produce them and make a quality. Tell me about that process. How you came to meet Brian Unger. I assume
Oh,
you
yeah.
worked with Brian, stuff like that. How did that come about
Uh,
for you?
it's funny. Did you mention before Mike Nugent?
Yeah, Mike.
Yeah. When he played with the West Houston
Yeah,
band,
that's right. Right.
and I was very good friend with the high school with Wes's son, and he was in a band, and they had recorded with Brian. and I was looking to do something, and I said, "Look, had you?" Yeah, absolutely. And then I went out and met him, and obviously we stayed together the duration.
Right,
We
right.
made. He's my Tony Visconti. It's
Yeah, yeah. In fact, you were, if I recall,
sure.
you and Brian, and there was another gentleman. I didn't catch his name. Who was playing the
Yeah,
bass.
sure.
Were on West Houston's
Yeah,
program.
it's wild. Yeah, it's like 10 years ago. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And that I did it in that format just because it was easy. Like we'll play with the three musicians. I didn't try to expand it anything past that. And then at the end, Wes joins us on a song. It was a song from my first record after the Complex, just a solo record. It was called Late September, Early October Affair, which I've done with a lot of people.
Oh, neat.
And yeah, he sat in with George Chris. You know Georgie, the harp player.
I do not.
Yeah, he's from the West Houston band too. He was. I bet you do. I bet you if
Yeah,
you
yeah,
saw him.
I probably. And what I do, just for people who are listening, any of the people that we mention, including the videos and stuff, there'll be links on the chapters of this episode if you want to get more information and kind of see how things came
Yeah,
about, back in the day,
sure.
So speaking of Brian, so Brian Unger was in the Complex. Brian
No.
has his own studio,
Yeah,
right?
he had recorded our two albums, and what happened was we kept a revolving lead guitar player. I played on those records. It was just the sound, mostly acoustic 12 string, and
Okay.
it was almost played it more like a percussive instrument, And we were recording, and our drummer is Tommy Vinton, and he had a lot of success with a band called Too Much Joy.
Hmm.
And Ronnie DiMaria was the bass player, and Brian had the background from industry in the '80s, from MTV and all
Right,
that.
right.
Sure, and so he was always like he was our chief engineer and always like the part of the production process of the record. So when we came around this time, I said let's do. We haven't played in a long time. I think it was 15, 14 years, whatever. I said, let's let him do it. And, it was a natural fit, for someone as talented as him. And plus, he was there for the recording of a lot of our music. So it was great.
Yeah,
I
I
think
have.
he had a great time.
Yeah, I happened to run across because you guys played in Garden City
Sure. Yeah. Yes.
In December, and I caught that on Facebook, and I
Sure.
saw Brian. I'm like, oh, okay. I see the connection here. It's pretty cool,
Somebody once said it was a picture from a show I did, and I guess they knew me or knew somebody in the group, and it was on Facebook, and they saw him and they said, "How did you get Johnny Marr to play with you?" From the Smiths. I said, you know what? I could answer this one or two ways.
Right, exactly.
So
So why don't we do this? Why don't we just take a short break, and when we come back, I want to talk about one of the songs that we're going to put up, one of your original songs, or the one with the Complex, and we'll kind of talk about that process from when you put things out there, back in the day or back in the '90s, whenever it came out, and where things are or today, because it's very, very different. So if everybody just stick with us, and we'll be right back. Are you a singer-songwriter who wants to take your music to the next level, and you need some professional musicians and really that expertise to help you along? Well, check out Melts in Your Ears Studio. It's Mike Nugent's studio. If you like what you've heard here today, Mike's the guy who can make the connections, put the tracks together, and give you a quality product. Check it out. Hey, we're back, everybody. We're here with Marco Conelli, and you're listening to the Long Island Sound Podcast. Marco, I'm really interested in the process you had in producing songs in the day compared to what can be done today. It obviously was a different process. Kind of walk us through that, and then we're going to feature one of your original songs called Blame, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and we'll go into that. So let's talk about the process.
yeah, the process was we used to carry a lot of those big boxes with the reels in them, people like was it M3 and Ampex and
Oh,
all those
yeah, sure.
yeah, it just was I do believe it just had it was a lot of things that went into it, having a good room. I was a big stickler for having been a drummer, drum
Hmm.
sounds, you know. I read about, you know, some albums where I really liked big drum sounds and how they were made, and it seems agonizing, but I think just, you know, if you have a good room and, you know, I quickly learned the importance of the microphone, you know.
Oh yeah, I've learned that the hard way
Yeah.
doing podcasts. I'll tell you that.
But we got a little carried away in the first album. Like, yeah, Brian had all these old tricks there. It was like, was that a B3? Wow, I'd like to hear a B3 on this song. You know, is
Right.
that a Leslie cabinet? Let's plug it in. You know, so there's a lot of that stuff in that album.
How
And
many tracks? How many tracks did you work with in that
uh,
album? Was it?
24. That was
Okay.
24. Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay.
And you know what? I almost sometimes like if I were to do things again. Maybe it would go for like a 16 so you wouldn't have the room to overindulge, you know,
Mm.
once again. But that, yeah, those were 24 tracks. I don't think 24 tracks were used, you know,
Right. Right.
isolated hand claps and things like that, you know.
Right. 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 That's true. Like even in my little office, I was talking to Mike, and I'm like, I actually had a sound engineer, a guy named Kevin Kelly, said, "Yeah, that's you got a problem." I said, "I think it's my microphone." He said, "Could be, but it's probably your room."
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know, and I
yes.
ended up, I ran to Harbor Freight and got some moving blankets and strung some things up and put up some sound panels, and man, what a difference it makes, you know.
Power of the moving blanket.
The moving blanket. Yeah, I know. I got a little nervous because when my wife saw the moving blanket, her hopes got up. But I said, "No, I'm not moving out. I'm staying."
Oh,
So
man.
I know. Yeah, Again, the look of regret on her face. I'm used to it. So you go into the production studio. Everything's mostly
Sure.
analog at that point. So you
Yes.
were mentioning you don't have the ease of slicing and
Yeah.
dicing, so to speak, things that flubs or what have you. So you really had to put a lot of time into it, would be my assumption.
And you know, you had an engineer with a really good ear, you know. I would you could glean from Brian if he wanted to tell you something wasn't good, and you know, without you know, just like you know, like Todd Rundgren as a producer said that, all right, that was crap, you know. No, I
Right.
mean, when you had Brian hissing, he'd listen to the playback and go, that's interesting. That meant do it again, you know, that meant do it again.
Right. Right. Exactly. And there is that nuance on how you work within a group
Sure.
to
But
get the
yeah,
best out of them, I would
we
assume.
might not have heard as much again, and that's the benefit of yeah, the engineer being a very good musician, you know, in their own right, is hearing things too. But I've seen equally successful producers that weren't, you know, they just had tremendous ear for
Right.
things. You know?
For arranging. So
Yeah,
let's talk about Blame and how that
sure.
came
Yeah,
about, and when it came, when you produced it, that sort of thing.
this is interesting. The song goes back to about 2006, and I did record it once, but it wasn't released, and it wasn't really wasn't. So I found some tracks on a home recorder of
Hmm.
me drumming with the exception of hitting cymbals because I just my mics wouldn't do that, and playing guitar, and I don't know. I was just looking to do some work, and I felt the song, you know, needed because we did it in all the shows, you know. So I said, Whenever another record falls out of my head, it's gonna be we're gonna need this." So I remember taking the wave files over to Brian and adding the cymbals because he had the drum room,
Mhm.
and then he played the really nice, you know, guitar work that you hear in the recording. I think between us, we both played a little bit of organ and stuff
Hmm.
and vocals. So it was always the opening song in my solo set, not the complex, for a long time, and people got used to it. And what I really liked too was. If you ever go on YouTube, you can see the video that accompanies it. That's a lot. It was a lot of
Well, I'll
fun.
definitely put a link for it.
Yeah,
Absolutely, yeah.
that was cool. So so
Yeah.
this is Blame. You know, like I said, the more things change, the more they stay the same. We're just looking for someone to blame.
All right, let's check it out.
us now. Overtried, never cried. Even when it hurt and how. Goodnight song, exposing wrong. Been hanging on too long. The more things change, the more they'll stay the same. We're just looking for someone to blame. Reservations, destinations. Lodged inside of the mind. Quit complaining about the mountaintop. You never learn to love the climb. Things change, the more they'll stay the same. We're just looking for someone to blame. Now we're on the same page, never eye to eye. The only good was in goodbye. Just looking for someone to blame.
That was really wonderful. What a great song. So who played on that song? You had Brian Unger?
Yeah,
yourself?
I did the let me see. I did the drumming, the acoustic guitar, vocal, a little bit. Brian did the majority of the piano. And he had this old Les Paul Jr. or something. It was a really cool guy. I said I want to hear this one, and well, we had it through I think like a tube amp or something like that, and then the guy you probably heard of, Tommy DeMecco. You've probably seen him on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Tommy actually played the bass on that, which was recorded at home. You know, that was another one. I think I tried to do a home recording years ago and just abandoned it and found the tracks, you know, a few years later and went over there. I just, I remember I have a Martin D35 and it just, whatever microphone I used, it just had this great sound. And I said, all right, no, let's
Great
record
tone.
the rest of the song. Yeah, I love Martin guitarists. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just interesting because you know, people make fun when you have multiple guitars and they're like, you know, why? Well, each one has a different personality and a different tone to it. You know, I think that's kind of neat. What I'm interested in, and when I looked at your bio, I see this detective. You did undercover work.
Sure. Yeah.
You're an author. You've written several books. How did like, did you balance the two together? I mean, how did that kind of work
I
for
think
you?
I think you get on one avenue for a while, and then the other. Writing, you have to stay diligent as an author. And actually, the current project I'm working on now is actually with another writer, so this is fun. It's like,
Mm,
uh, and it's somebody I'll announce the details at a later date, but
okay.
it's an interesting story. And the other person is in Nashville, Tennessee. So when you put together a plan and all right, this is what I have, and this is your part, this is my part. It's a very interesting process, just beginning now, but I'm looking forward to this. So, but I do that. You have to stay diligent about the time. And I have an hour in the evening here. Even if you just pick up the notebook, if you put 10 words down, it's 10 more than you had yesterday, right?
Right. So that's your woodshedding. It kind of like what you would do within your purposeful about putting that
Yeah.
time aside.
It's amazing too, because I think days when you feel a certain way creatively, you're right, and days when you have to work and you're not feeling very creative, go back and edit what you did. You know what I mean? Because
Oh,
you'll
interesting.
yeah, you'll find somebody saying, know what I mean, over and over. Like
Yeah, exactly. I
it's
mean,
so great.
when I've written stuff,
Sure.
what I learned is one, it all goes out on the page. I
Mhm.
don't edit as I go. I just kind of put it out there. I might write something twice with a different
Yeah,
phrasing in it,
exactly.
and then I go back at it. And actually, my wife Debbie was great. She would listen to stuff
Yeah,
I've written and say, because I found it interesting from a writer's perspective to have a female's interpretation of what I'm writing, because they always say, you know what you're writing, but you don't know what people are hearing, particularly
yeah.
if it's just if it's a spoken word or a song or anything like that. And it's good to get that opinion,
I think in the young adult series, the one female who's hangs out with the two, other teenagers is the most fun to write for. What's interesting was when the third book came out in 2010, I won the Silver Falchion Award in 2011, and then I changed audiences, not genre. I wanted to like the adult
Hmm.
mystery, but I have a short story with those characters. It's last I heard, it's coming out in an anthology in June. It's called um, after is it, After Midnight was the last one. It'll come to me, but it's coming out in June. It's just, the characters return in like almost like a paranormal
You
mystery.
know,
But
you know what caught me, and I'm
yeah,
probably dating myself. I've twin sisters who are 14 years older than
oh,
me, and Nancy Drew
yeah.
and the Hardy Boys. That kind of jumped out at me when I saw that, and I'm like,
Uh,
oh, this is kind of cool, you know?
I'm looking right on the other side of the wall. They're on a bookshelf right there.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
My sisters had the whole. I
yeah,
still remember
yeah.
it. They were hardcover books.
Did they
Nancy Drew were in
have?
yellow.
Yeah, all right. They had the yellow covers. Yeah,
You know
yeah.
about this? Yeah.
They were rewritten years later. When I first when Matthew Livingston first came out and I did interviews, I used to talk about this a lot. They were the Hardy Boys. It was a Stratmeyer industry, and he had this idea to write books. He wrote. I think he had Tom Swift too, things like that,
Hmm.
and they wrote for these audiences. And years later in the '60s, I don't know, it was a project that came along and rewrote them in sensitive, smaller than they actually were,
Oh, I see.
because they weren't exactly time sensitive. Like a person of this ethnicity was represented this way in the book, and
Oh, okay.
I'd probably be the same way if you like. I love Edgar Rice Burroughs as a writer, but if you read Tarzan, you'd probably see a lot of dated language and depictions of people. So the Hardys and Nancy were taken through this. I'm always interested in both books because, in fact, I just had gotten one from eBay. They call them the old text, old text. So that they used to have brick brown covers on them and dust covers and things
Hmm.
like that. So it's interesting. But Nancy was, in fact, I'll tell you one of the things that was edited out of Nancy in the very early book. She carried a gun.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
And maybe
She
that
definitely
wasn't
did.
too
Yeah.
feminine at the time for,
Um,
the stereotype of wasn't girly enough, I guess, maybe.
I don't know if it was Wildcat Swamp or something, but she shoots like a wild animal in one of them. It's yeah, exactly. Years later, I guess that was maybe depicted in a violent nature. Because when I got into that business, I didn't have 100% guidance, but some people told me, here's your boundaries with teenagers. They
Okay.
can do this, they can't do this. This is so, and I fell into it. I
Yeah,
just
your
kind of
guardrails, so to
yeah,
speak, right?
yeah. The
Well,
boundaries.
I'm gonna ask you a similar question, when you picked up an instrument and now you pick up a pen and the day you say, "I'm gonna write a book,"
Sure.
what gave you the to me, it's very courageous, to say, "No, really, I'm gonna write a book," how did that come about?
I think if there was any steel in my spine, it came from I went in the bookstores. I used to go to a lot of bookstores, and the young adult genre was dormant, except for Nancy and the Hardys. So I
Mhm.
just call them the blues and the yellows.
Okay, yep.
They were dormant. No one was writing in this. I said, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to take everything I know, from a crime perspective, and make a more believable character. Like the thing I found with those, and they're great characters, but they were perfect. They could fly, they could drive, they had motorcycles, and
They were superheroes, yeah.
yeah, they could just leave school at any given time. So
Well, kinda like today,
I
kinda
had
like
my
today.
guys in school, and it was like,
Right.
okay, at 3 o'clock, meet here. We got to do this, so that was my that's what gave me the oomph.
So you're coming from so you're a cop, you're a
Uh,
detective, you do undercover work. You're coming from the reality that you see every day,
yeah,
and you which is great. You bring that,
yeah.
your deductive reasoning, your investigation to a character who's a teenager,
Sure.
right?
Yeah, exactly. And that was the wow of it. And the big part of it was tricky was the actual cops in the book are kind of like their enemies, like they're always after the kids to, what were you doing over there yesterday,
Right, right,
that
right.
type of, so it's yeah, it plays on that level. It plays on that level. And that was just, what was disappointing, Steve, was in 2007 when the first one came out, and you know I have the original release of it right here.
Oh, cool.
Hang on a second. Just, when it came out, the first one, there was nothing like it. And
Mhm.
when I did like the conferences and things like that, he's gonna have to sit on my lap for the rest of the show.
Little
When I
Sherlock
did,
Holmes
yeah,
doll,
okay,
just
so
for
yeah,
those who can't
well,
see.
that's the little one. This is the
Oh,
big one.
nice, nice. So
No,
so
but he's
so so you go out and you find a publisher? I mean, how
yeah,
did
yeah. I got it was a small house in. I think they were in California, and they were interested in it. But the disappointing thing, I'm doing the conferences, and everyone else is, the mainstream crime fiction.
right.
Uh, I had a shot, and it came from Long Island.
Hmm.
Remember, like the Islandeer did a nice write up on it. A couple of Eastern Queens newspapers did it. Segment on the news. It was getting this attention within a year. I'm telling you, and it's not a coincidence. Within a year, um, James Patterson is writing a young adult book.
Ah,
Um, the guy who does the legal thrillers, I'm sorry, just escaped me. He's got them. Carl Hyson is writing them. Madonna, it's.
yeah, yeah,
I have a news like a from the funnies in the newspaper. I clipped out an article. I forget what comic strip it was. It says, "Gee, I want to be a young adult writer. What do I need to be, to be, successful as a young adult writer?" And the kid next to him says, "You have to be famous."
yeah, right, exactly, that's the draw through. So you open the door and Patterson,
Well,
flew in.
it's a strange coincidence. At the time
Mhm.
when that came out, Nancy Drew went to the big screen. It didn't do well. I don't know. I don't think it did well. 2007. That was the title of the article I was in. Said, teen detectives are everywhere. Nancy's on the big screen. Somebody else was somewhere, and Marco Conelli is now introduced to Matthew Livingston. So it was an interesting setup, but something that I think Encyclopedia Brown was supposed to happen. It
Hmm.
didn't. Like the rights were secured for him to go to the big screen, but it didn't.
Well, if
So
you
that, yeah,
you think about what marketable from a Hollywood
yeah,
situation, where you spoke about Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys being somewhat, or maybe I said it's superheroes,
yeah,
and the whole Marvel and that aspect of things of fantasy and the pseudo empowerment of things that you can do. It's interesting when you actually have, and superheroes have flaws, right? We all have our
sure.
Achilles heel. But when you're able to humanize them, where that falls into the marketplace, and I'm sure the publisher thinking, how can we make the most money on this?
Well,
Yeah,
it's interesting when you said it before. I immediately thought of there was a story. Forgive me, I don't know the title of. There was so many of them, but where the Hardys are following somebody and they don't want to be recognized, so they grease their hair back and put on big speckled glasses. This is before Clark Kent and Superman. It
Oh
was like,
wow,
it's just, yeah, it really was. And
yeah.
I think in even one of them, there's a mysterious person climbing down a giant web down a cliff. And they proceeded a lot
Yeah,
of
we all
them.
borrow from each other or steal, depending on
Yes,
on which side of it
how,
you're on.
and how guilty we feel.
Very, very interesting. So now the balance. So you're fully into the writing
Yeah.
now. You're running down that lane. Where are you with your music? Is that still running somewhat of a
Uh,
parallel track, or
yeah.
is it?
Well, it's interesting when we did say, hey, let's do a complex show, and when
Mhm.
we had a date on the books, I started writing new songs, and I was kind of like writing them. Before I would be very like heavy-handed with writing something. I demo something out in every instrument, and I was writing very loosely for songs. Hopefully that we never did a third album. We never
Mhm.
did a third album. We had two very good albums, but you always think about that. What if this? I think somebody reckoned like what would be a Pete Townsend solo album and what would be a Who album, and
Right.
I'm not comparing myself to Pete Townsend in any way, but like they'd listen to one of his, and I think it was an interviewer years ago, and he said, "Well, was that something the Who just passed on?" And
Oh, I see. Right.
yeah, but just to write some stuff that we could really work together as well, because in the solo aspect, I work alone. You don't really bounce ideas too freely off people. So, but that's it. You're just looking forward to playing again. And
Sometimes I think you need a that show that's coming up,
yeah,
or that
yeah,
release or what have you, that kind of gives you the motivation to kind of get your stuff in gear, and
yeah,
move towards that. I think that's the exciting thing. That gives you the energy to kind of run with things. So it's really
yeah.
interesting.
It's the beauty of music is you can run the extremes of what you like and what you want to do, and even though I have a good chunk of stuff waiting to be heard or worked out, I wouldn't mind throwing one or two of those into the next show to try out. But I got just came out Friday. This will make you feel old. It's the 30th anniversary of the second Keith Richards solo album. It's called Main Offender, and
Okay.
I saw him on that tour in the Beacon Theater in 1993, and I loved his first album. I never
Hmm.
had the second album, and I think part of that was radio. The song "Radio" was spinning. It was good. I didn't think it was great. I
Hmm.
just heard like some of this album, and you're like just sitting there, like, how does he get that sound? How does he get that tone? And
Right.
like it almost like want to do a record of like like Keith don't have a lot of words in his songs. It's
Right.
just
Right.
when he chooses to say something, you'll hear it. And that's just another fun thing. If you could pluck away, I wouldn't mind doing a few songs in that vein. And people can do that musically. Sometimes they can become somebody else.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Complex, because I'd like to get
Sure.
into
Yeah.
the Winter of Discontent and how that song came about. It seems very upbeat, and it kind of plays into what 2021 was for a lot of us.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's from the second album. So we had the first album was called Expectations and Dismay. It came out. I think it was done the end of 1995. But when like college radio and things like that heard it was 1996. And then in 2000 we had the songs from Forgotten Children. And so the first album is done, and you're playing a lot, and you're playing in front of people. And I think at that point we was sliding a couple of new songs that weren't on the album would be on the second album, songs like Incomplete and I Can't Touch You Anymore, songs like that. And then I wrote The Winter of Discontent, but it was a good 10 months before we did it in a show. And because at the time I didn't think it sounded like a lot of the other stuff. I'll never forget we were doing a show in New York City after my first solo album called Sitting in Snow, and it was the only Complex song I did solo. It was,
Okay.
and I didn't do any of the other material because that was our stuff. And
sure.
but I did that one. And we were listening to, they recorded the show, and it was the ride home we were listening to, and I had Ray Forgione was the drummer in the backseat, and I had Johnny Spadaro was the guitar player. And Ray had learned the song for the show, and he says, "Man," he said, "I love this song." He said, "What Bob Dylan album is this on?" John looked at him as it's his, like I'm driving.
It's a nice That's a nice compliment.
Yeah, that's a good die now, But
right.
It was it was again it was a little different from the other music, but so that's why it took a little while for me to put it in the set. But I haven't heard it in a long time, and we had played played a bunch when we played in the end of November in Garden City. We just did it. We didn't have a lot of rehearsal for that show. We just did it, and that's what I like about those musicians. It's like, it was 14 years since we played with each other, and it was yesterday.
Like yesterday. I know.
I'm sure you've had that experience along the way.
I have that experience on boys' weekends where I turn into, from a 60-year-old to a 16-year-old.
That's it.
And have all my buddies bust my balls and remember things that either I choose not to remember or, I remember that. So why don't we jump into right now the Winter of Discontent, and let's have a listen, okay?
Well, I truly was destined to believe that I wouldn't get better than this. I leaned over my shelf, don't sink, and I went to cut my wrist. Why doesn't the sun want to shine and the cork gets broken off in the wine? But I got so sick of sentiment, cause it sounded ever so spent. I threw out every letter you wrote in a winter of discontent. So I squared off and shrugged my shoulders and I put both feet on the ground. Hard to see somebody you can trust when you're hanging upside down. Where will you roll me to when the people are laughing at the things that you do? Put the past in the past and let it fade away. Don't come bothering me no more. I grew up out of shoes and in the winter of discontent. When will it you go? What will you say? Live for today, it's much harder than you think. What will you say? In another way, 'cause you're right back over the same. Now I truly was destined to believe that I could get better than this. Ain't no use complaining about it, just much too much to miss. Well, my eyes are open wide and the thorn was taken out of my side, and I finally taken out the last of your trash, and I got myself some sense. I might even kick your sister's ass in the winter of discontent.
And we're back. That was really great. It's interesting what you did is allowing us to get the little bit of insight before we heard the song. So I'm sure people got more out of it. And then, did you do a video for that song too?
No,
Oh, okay.
I told a funny. I thought it was funny anyway. It was this stuff. You're mid 20s when you record this, and one of the songs, I don't think it was Janine, I think it was one of the other songs, we were approached at the time with the idea of recording a video for it. And I don't know, I had seen an interview, I think it was with Michael Stipe from REM.
Okay,
and,
yeah.
it was describing the video, The End of the World as We Know It. A kid is basically going through the house and it's all filled with REM memorabilia. And the protagonist is here, and I'm describing it like that to the video people, the producer, and I got Ronnie DiMaria with me, and and they're like, yeah, it's not really what we're seeing. I don't, and it is, unless you have a better idea, I think we may have to pass. And how dare you? How dare you? I'm a genius. And it's just with his Tom Jones approach. How about this? Our tour van breaks down, and it also just so happens a bus full of Swedish swimsuit models offers to give us a ride. It's just like, hey, it's brilliant. Let's do it.
Yeah, sex sells. Yeah. Get the girls in it. These guys aren't that good looking.
I didn't. We didn't get to video that. I don't know how you would video that, but yeah, Blame has a good video to it. I like the Blame video.
All right, good. We'll definitely put a link with that. So
yeah, you know what? I got to give her the plug.
Please.
The Spanish actress, now from Los Angeles, Denise Baraz Trapa is in the Blame video. She's very, very good. She should have been the Karen Page in Netflix Daredevil. I saw her audition real quick, but it was they did get a good actress. But so that's a lot of fun. But yeah, that's another thing. In the future, I do like an idea for a video. It gives you the idea to play with the song a little bit more.
Sure.
Because if you think about it, as an author, you're going to write your book and then maybe see some. You don't walk around and read the book to people every night. Music was very different with that. We recorded and we want to run out and play it in front of people.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So what does the future hold for you, Marco? What's coming up next in your life? And
we have June 18th. This is Saturday. We'll be appearing at Prost. That's Prost. Very fun place. Just great place to
in Garden City.
Yes, Garden City. It's Franklin Avenue.
Yeah, it is on Franklin Avenue, right by the railroad track.
Exactly. You see that thing going up and down when you play it. Catch it. You know what? This is just one long energetic set of music, and it's a fun vibe, and it went over very well there. And the very great guy. You've been there, right?
I've been there. Yep. Yeah. Absolutely.
James McCartney, not that James McCartney, because Paul McCartney's name is actually James, I think, isn't it? I think it's James Paul McCartney.
Right.
No, this James McCartney, great, and just a music fan. And when you are working with a guy like that, who I want to hear you guys down here. It's cool. You know, you're part of the team. You know.
Yeah, it's nice.
So
It's
that'd be
a nice
Saturday, June 18th.
collaboration.
Yes, yeah.
Nice collaboration. So
And
when
you get to see Steve Yusko there. He'll have his
I'll be there with
headphones
my
on.
wife Debbie, or some other lady. Just call her Debbie.
Debbie.
So listen, when you get done with your secret collaborative work that you're writing on now,
Yeah.
we're going to record you again, and we'll add it to this
Absolutely.
episode so we can get the information out. Anybody who's following Marco Conelli and Long Island Sound will get to know about this mysterious project that you're working on.
Keeping the Long Island scene alive in great podcasts like this, it serves to remind people how important Long Island was to music, popular music, because I think it's a great documentary if you ever get a chance to see. It's called Dare to Be Different, the one about WLIR.
Oh yeah, with my lady I know, Malibu Sue.
Yeah, sure. I remember Sue. Yeah,
trying to get her on the podcast too. So
Sue should do the podcast. The great thing about that is I wonder if people would have ever heard new wave music had it not been for that station. You know.
Right. Yeah. And I look at one of my favorite stations is WFUV.
Yeah.
For the Fordham station, because it plays so many different eclectic things that I would never have gotten introduced to, like the Lumineers and First Aid Kit out of the Netherlands and stuff like that. I would never heard about it. But what I'm finding interesting with this podcast, this little self-promotion, is I'm discovering these people that, he's from Long Island. That guy's from Long Island. Yeah. And one leads into the next, the next. And everyone's been really gracious with their time. And I end my podcast a lot like this. And a good friend of mine from Garden City told me, and he got this from Joe Torre when he was volunteering for some work. And he said, this is nothing, Joe. And Joe's like, no. He goes, we can account. It's in our bank account for things we own. We really can't account for the time we have left here on Earth. So when you, Marco, give me your time, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve. Great show, and looking forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Till next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace. Thanks so much for listening. Please rate, review, and comment on the show. We really love to hear from you. And call our listener line at 631-800-3579. Again, thanks so much. Be well.